Hello everyone. Today is the final day of presentations, and I am presenting the American multiculturalism. This is my personal information. And first, we have look up the what is the cultural studies. The word culture itself so difficult to pin down. Cultural studies are hard to define. As Patrick Brintelinger has pointed out, culture study is not a tightly coherent, a unified movement with the fixed agenda, but a loosely coherent group of tendency, issues, and questions. Cultural study also the not be a simple terms. It's a described of social issues, tendency, and questions. What in the social happened and arising from the social turmoil of the 1916, culture studies are composed of elements of Marxism, post-structuralism, post-modernism. Whole subject are connected with the cultures. That's like a feminism point of view to study in the cultures, gender study, anthropology, sociology, race, ethnic study, film theory, urban studies, public policy, popular culture study, and post-colonial study. The whole subject are relevant of the cultures and the types of cultural study, the five type of cultural study: the British cultural multiculturalism, second is new historicism, third is American multiculturalism, fourth is postmodernism and popular culture, and fifth is the post-colonial study. And in this presentation I am dealing the third type of cultural study is the American multiculturalism. And first, we have look up the dictionary definition of multiculturalism according to American Heritage Dictionary of English Language. That is, multiculturalism is the relative several cultures connected with many cultures and the social or educational theory that encourages interest in many cultures with society rather than in only mainstream culture. And American culturalism, that is 1965, the what race riot drew a worldwide attentions. That is what race riot is the incidents, and that in the 20 years old younger boy, the arrest the in the police arrest in the drunk case, and that it incidents happen in the 1965, that in America. And then Civil Right Act had passed in 1964. It's a give to human rights, and backlash was well underway in the 1965. Murders and other atrocities attended the civil rights march from Selma to Montgomery. I mean, Selma is peacefulness of that, and President Lyndon Johnson signed to Voting Rights Act. In this act, the woman's right given that, but in that time, the one persons are suffering by the policeman and harass that. And the in that question, that is the woman's rights to give the freedom, liberty, but how that they are not working like that. And Americans will be puzzled by race distinctions from the past, since children of multiracial background may be the norm rather than expectations. And given the huge influx of Mexican Americans into the United States over the last 15 years, immigration's patterns indicate that by the year 2015. In this way, the look at the United States in the look at the futuristic view, that Anglo-American will no longer to be a majority in United States. Mexican American are marginalized that, and that no English necessary the most widely spoken language. And Henry Louis Gates uses the word race only in the quotation marks for the pretendence to be an objective term of classification, but it is a dangerous trope of ultimate irreducible difference between cultural and linguistic group and adherents of specific belief systems, which more often than not also have fundamentally opposed economic interests. And race is still a critical feature of American life, full of contradictions and ambiguities. It is a once that greater source of social conflict and the richest source of culture in developing in America. And American multiculturalism study that the race, gender, ethnicity, genders, and sexuality in the provides a interdisciplinary view of multicultural study in United States and addresses the wide range of topics that continue to define and shape this era of study. And African American literature. In this part of the one is African American literature. In that in literature written by American of African descent, and beginning in the pre-Revolutionary War period, African American writers have engaged in a creative, if often continuous, dialogues with the American letters. And that the time the reach is a expressive sublet social insight and offering illuminate as assessment of American identity and history. And although since 1970 the African American writers there are in the Toni Morrison's, she is the well-known novelist in America, and she is also right in racism in the movement, and she also write the problems is of the what happened in the United States, and in his novel, in her novels, and recognize the international as well national since in inception in the late 18th century. And allusions use the black writers to trust their own experience and definition of reality. That is the black writer also inspired her life and on your experience and write a reality through in their work. And he also upheld the folklore as a source of creativity. It was what black people had before they knew that there was such a thing as art. And Salve narrative is the work of the bloody Nat Turner rebellions in the Southampton country, Virginia in 1831 is increasing a fervent anti-slavery movement in United States. And the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass as an American slave who written American slave Frederick Douglass work he in American slave written by himself in 1845. It explained the establishing in the African American men's of later. And in this work, he described the education and independence and portrayed himself as a self-man, which appealed strong to middle class with American. And prose, drama, and poetry in African American, that is the slave narrative. African American entered the world of prose and dramatic literature. In the 1853, William Wells Brown, an internationally known fugitive slave narrator, authorized the first Black American novel, Clotel, or the President's Daughters. In that novel tells that tragic story of beautiful light-skinned African American daughter to Thomas Jefferson and his slave mistress. Clotel dies trying to save her own daughter for slavery. And 5 years later, Another is the Brown also published is the first African American play that is the A Leap for Freedom. The Escape or Leap for Freedom is the based on the familiar to a reader to fugitive slave narrative. In 1859, the first African American woman fiction appeared. The two offer a short story by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper deals with a middle class woman who race in not a specified. And American Indian literature that another part is American Indian literature influence that is the deals with religions in moral values, practical codes, and practical lessons of everyday life. For American Indian, story are source of strength in face of centuries silence by Europe America. The term Indian missed normal and stereotype as the cowboys and Indians. That is the Indian American Indian are not to get a proper respect and not give and accept the proper money for that their works in Indian giver that help to white rest the continent away from the Indian indigenous people, and yet American Indians is often preferred by Indians over Native American, as demonstrated in the names of such organization as the American Indian Movement or Association for the Study of American Indian Literatures. According to Ellen R. Wells notes that, and the best name to use would be those of hundreds of tribes which unawareness of the different languages belief and custom, and that is together as the Indian, and the European identity themselves is the French and Dutch, but rather than European. So to American Indians identities are tribal, and two type of Indian literature have evolved in field of study. That first is traditional Indian literature, and second is mainstream Indian literature. The traditional Indian literature also we know that the oral form is a song and tells that one generation tells to in next generations people, and then spreading the that way of songs and oratory way. And mainstream Indian literature are also refer of the Indian English tradition genre of fictions, poetry, and autobiographically way. And it was not until the 1960s that is American reading public at the large become aware of work by American Indian writers, especially after the publication of Kyoto writer M. Scott Mohammed Day's House Made of Bronze, which won the Pulitzer Prize, and that the way that in this field that work is the beginning a renaissance of Indian fiction and poetry. And thank you. And this is my references.